Everybody, welcome to the December 6, 2022 Open Space Advisory Committee meeting and consolidated with the Carson Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. So the first thing we're going to do is call the meeting to order, and the next thing we're going to do is have a roll call. So,
from the PRC, or Parks and Recreation Commission, Chairperson Case, Vice Chair Meyer,
here.
Commissioner Schutte,
Here.
Commissioner Whitefield, here. Commissioner Caldwell,
Here.
Commissioner Wilkie McCulloch,
Here.
Commissioner Kiever. A quorum is present. And then from the Open Space Advisory Committee, Chairperson Welch,
Present.
Vice Chair Kimbrough,
Here.
Member Inverson,
Here.
Member Martinovich,
Here.
Member Galeri,
Here.
Member Burge.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so right now I'm going to let you guys know that on the agenda on 5C, there's a fee approvals and so forth. That's not going to be on the agenda tonight. There was some information that wasn't shared with the whole committee. So we're going to push that to the next joint meeting. So that will not be discussed this evening. So we'll skip right over that. So the first thing we're going to do is ask for public comment. So with public comment, we're going to ask for public comment this evening. And then we're going to have that public comment. And then from there, we're going to move through the agenda. And at the end of the meeting, we'll call for public comment again. There's no other items on the agenda that would warrant any public comment. So does anybody have any questions on that? 5C. You're welcome. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to call for any public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to talk to anything that has to do with Parks and Recreation, or is not on the agenda? Oh, go ahead, sir.
Not quite sure how to address you all, but Chair and Commissioner,
Well, it's just fine.
you all. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you. My first comment is that I'd like to thank Nick Wentworth again for taking the time that he did to help me understand the survey about Mills Park. Apparently, that's a work in progress. As such, I had 14 questions for him. You answered them very directly and such. I don't feel that the whole public has gotten that news. I think I would really have liked him to consider making what he told me available to the community, just so that we're kept up on it. There are going to be changes, but it certainly helped me understand why they were considering certain locations. The logistics of it, whether there was electricity, whether there was water, whether maintenance would be available, if you're combining the water, well, what would you call it? Anyhow, the water play area that they're considering, and the deal is that it has to be logistically where they can have the showers and other things, and so those things would be close to the pool at one point. That may change, but there are things that are in fluctuation that I think would be nice if the community could understand. I'm totally opposed to putting any asphalt area on the park for food services or any other activity. Cutting that green space in half or so would just deteriorate the view, the activity use, availability, and a lot of other things. So that's my personal thing on that, but I really would like to encourage the parks to be, like, he went into great detail with me with my 14 questions, but I don't think that's accessible to the public. So it was just an exchange between us otherwise. And I'd like all that information, which would be helpful to inform people that not only are they going to maybe say there's a basketball court, but maybe where the limitations of where it might be located, and they might change their mind about having it or not. But that was important to me. Plus, I would like to say that I have a difficulty understanding when we're talking, and I think you as Supervisor Schulte might have listened. There are people like myself that are concerned about open space backyards, or backyards being considered open space. And there may be a concern as to the wording. There's open spaces in parks and recreation. There's open space required with developments. They have to have a certain amount of open landscaping area per square foot. If there's a trade-off and open space is saying you can have your density, but we need this much then designated to open space. So I think having 3 different ways to relate to open space when you're talking about it. Otherwise, I think of it as Prison Hill or such. And then otherwise, when it's with a development, I think of it as their required landscaping. So I think there should be a designated difference in the wording is all, because it can get really confusing otherwise for me, and I think it did for several people probably listening to the supervisors meeting deal. Also, it was really hard to find the board members and committee member people. Went to the computer, had help from librarians. The activity calendar doesn't format out when you go to make a copy. It comes out in quarters. And then you have to patch it together, so you have to have 4 pieces, sort of like having the maps of Las Vegas now, all over the place. So it would be nice if they would consider their formation and format on city calendar. It should have all meetings, regardless if they're the sheriff's office or if they're in another facility. I would appreciate that very much. Other than that, I just am delighted that we have so much going for us. I guess the last comment would be that when I went up to the dump, I saw that the disc park had some work done to it, and that work meant some trees coming out, and that broke my heart. And if I'm wrong about that, and that brush was related to some other activity, then they didn't come out, fine. But they don't have to have a permit to do so, and I don't think anybody was really notified those changes would be, and I'll cut my deal now. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the audience that would like to speak? Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Michael Plansky, Secretary for Carson Ridge Disc Golf Club. Guess coming off of the last gentleman's comments, I can assure everyone that the Disc Golf Club has not removed any trees, but so I just have a prepared kind of statement and request I was going to read, so I'll do that. Thank you, members of the committees, the Parks Department, for this time. My name is Michael Plansky, and I'm Secretary of Carson Ridge Disc Golf Club. I began my activism for disc golf in Carson City in 2009, working with Kyle Horvath to develop a disc golf course in Centennial Park, but there wasn't a Parks Foundation back then to help get a new course and club on its feet. That project did not materialize, but under the umbrella of the Foundation for Carson City Parks and Recreation, spearheaded by Mayor Bagwell, the stadium course at Carson Ridge Disc Golf Park and Interpretive Trails is now ranked #1 in Nevada and ranked well above all other courses in the Tahoe-Carson region. It all started with a $118,000 Land and Water Conservation Fund matching grant. The volunteer hours for that grant were quickly overmatched, and our club's volunteer army model has steadily grown since opening in 2019. The volunteer efforts led by our club officers made the Capital City Disc Golf Championships last October a successful showcase of community-based recreation. Our club would like to thank the Parks Department and Visit Carson for their assistance with the event. Visit Carson has sponsored Hole 18's T sign with a message that suggests golfers explore more of Carson City after their round. And we get a lot of people visiting because of the high rating, visiting the course. So there's opportunity there. So we're looking forward to completing the vision and expansion of Carson Ridge as a template for sustainable conservation and tourism for future courses. We would like to meet and exceed the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant objectives of attractiveness, conservation, and community accessibility for the 5-year review coming up in only 2 years. At this time, our club would like to present our capital improvement needs itemized with cost estimates at your February Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Thank you for all that you guys do up there. Does anybody have any questions for? Go ahead, Stacy.
We just wanted to thank you. That event when we opened up the disc park was so much fun. I had never been out there, and my son-in-law plays a lot, and so he told me it was one of the best courses. And when we went out and the presentation and being able to watch the course and people teaching, it was just awesome. So I really did appreciate that event and the time that your volunteers and everybody in the Parks Department did too in that event.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Okay, if you would please get that information to Jennifer and Davis, at the Parks Department, so they'll know about prior to being on the agenda and so forth. Are you you want an item on the agenda? Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, there you go. We'll talk about it at the end of the meeting, but at the same time, get information to them and remind them, and we'll get you on there. Thank you very much for what you guys do.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else out there in the audience that would like to speak about anything with open space or Parks and Rec? Come on up. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. We're talking about, I think, agenda items in future meetings, and I'm wondering if you would consider an agenda item on Carson
Could
River.
we get your name for
Oh,
the
I'm
record?
sorry,
That's
Robin
perfectly fine.
Orloff.
Oh,
Robin
just
Orloff.
Wait till I stop talking.
Robin Orloff. Anyway, since we're talking about agendas and upcoming meetings, I'm wondering if you would consider adding to the next, or one of the next agendas, Carson River Trail 3. And you might be familiar with that. It's going to be going from the OHV area past Clearview out to Snyder and up to the Kuntz. It's going to look like the trail that goes from 5th Street to Silver Saddle Ranch, which, as you know, is like 10 to 12 feet wide, road base, 3-foot wide shoulders. It was constructed by heavy machinery, and it is essentially a trail that's a road that doesn't allow OHV. So I would suggest, my concern to bringing this up is to put it through the OHV area. A non-OHV trail through the OHV area, I think, is a step backwards. The area's come a long way. The OHVers were pushed back from the whole Prison Hill in 1983 to the south end, and I think they're accommodating to that, and the open space is in the process of building a pretty incredible area. It's great for non-OHV, and I'm a dirt bike rider now, and I've been riding on my dirt bike OHVing for over a year. And I've got to say the spirit of cooperation and respect is greatly increased there between OHVs and non-OHVs. And I think putting in a non-OHV trail there is going to be a real slap in the face. I think we're going to have, it violates a lot of the ongoing spirit now of this OHV area because they can ride wherever they want. Existing designated trails, we go wherever we want on that trail, on that property that we're allowed to go. So to say to us, to OHVs, you can't go on this trail, plus logistically, I think it's going to be very difficult. To put the trail behind the homes on Gentry, again, I think might be a a difficulty. Are we being good neighbors? This is a 10 to 12-foot trail. It's going to be constructed in there. There's always already a very wide fire break. And we're going to have to destroy quite a lot of flora and fauna to put that road through there. And I commend Muscle Power, the trails that you're going to be discussing tonight. They're awesome. And I think to put a trail like that behind the homes in Gentry would be really considerate versus this wide trail that is planned. So maybe we could discuss it. Also the grant that it's under is Parks, Trails, Natural Areas, not fuels reduction. And a lot of the neighbors who've been calling have been told that it's going to help fuels reduction and fire, but we already have a fire break. And that's a whole separate grant. So just for consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and Greg heard everything you said. Making notes of it right now, right? So I'm sure that we'll have a discussion about that as time comes. So I'm going to need a little help with this next item. We have quite a few minutes here that need to be approved by both the joint committees and also by the Park and Rec and the Open Space Advisory Committee. How should we do that? One at a time? Okay, so let's do that one at a time. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask everybody about the Open Space Advisory Committee and Parks and Recreation Commission meeting on July 18th, 2022. If everybody's read those minutes and feel comfortable with those minutes, do I have a motion to approve?
Yes, I move to approve the minutes, but there is a correction that has been made, and the correction is on page 10. It's the motion carried 610 for the OSAC with OSAC vice chairperson. It should have said Kimbrough, and it has since been corrected, voting in opposition. Other than that, I move to accept the meetings as correct, or the minutes as corrected.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, well,
Either.
I think Alan beat you to it. We have so he's on the other side, so I think that works out well, that they both sides agree. All right, so how's everybody feel about voting on the minutes for that? Okay, everybody approve of those minutes? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, nay? Any nays? One nay? Oh,
Not
one-
a nay, I just need to abstain since I wasn't there.
Okay, great.
Susan Martinovich.
The next is the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting on August 16, 2022. So I'm looking over here to my right. How do we feel about the minutes that were presented to us for the August 16th meeting?
Commissioner Wilkie McCulloch, I motion that we approve the minutes for that meeting.
Do I have a second? Okay, I'll let you this time. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The next we have is a joint meeting of the next we have is a joint meeting between the Open Space and Parks and Recreation Commission, and that was on the 16th. That was, do we have a motion to approve those meetings? Yes. Donna?
I move that we approve the minutes for the Tuesday, August 16th joint meeting.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we're going to move on to the October 17th meeting of the Open Space Advisory Committee. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Do you have any comments or corrections? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the October 17th meeting of the Open Space Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passed unanimously.
Okay, Lisa, go ahead.
And I have a confession to make. I goofed on my motion. It was the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting 8/16 that had the correction. So on page 10. So my apologies on that, but
She's nodding her head.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the agenda. So we're at 5A, and this is for discussion only. We're going to have a presentation at Trailhead in every park and Nevada Division of Outdoor. We're going to have that right now. And Matthew, are you Matthew? Hi, Matthew. Welcome to the Carson City meeting.
I was just going to introduce him. Actually, but for the record, Greg Berger and Trails
Go ahead,
Coordinator
Greg.
for Carson City. And it's my pleasure to introduce Matthew Weintraub. He is the Deputy Administrator for the Nevada Division of Outdoor Recreation. At the recent Transportation, Trails, and Tourism Summit in Reno, Matthew gave a presentation. A member in person asked if he would give that presentation to all of you as well, and we're lucky to have him here tonight to do that. I also want to mention that during that summit and in the planning up to the summit, I had the pleasure to meet Matthew and the other members of their very small team at the Division of Outdoor Recreation, and they're all super great people, and a pleasure to have Matthew here tonight. So with that, I'll let you take it.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah. Matthew Weintraub, for the record, Deputy Administrator for the Nevada Division of Outdoor Recreation, and likewise, working with Greg and also Mark on that Nevada Transportation, Trails, and Tourism Summit Planning Group was just a privilege and a pleasure. I also, in a former life, I was a municipal employee, and before that, also served on a county parks board. So thank you, everyone up here, for your service. It's near and dear to my heart. So I was asked to give both the presentation from the summit and also a little update on the division. Have you all had a presentation about the Nevada Division of Outdoor Recreation yet? All right. Okay. So we have 2 hours here tonight? Is that? No? Okay. So I'll be quick. And maybe if we want a longer form presentation, happy to do that at another part or juncture in the year. So like I said, we're the Division of Outdoor Recreation. We have a very fun acronym of ENDOR. So whether you want to spend time inside or you're a Star Wars fan, there's lots of jokes we can make there. We are one of 8 divisions within Nevada's Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, housed right down the street in the Bryan building there. We were created in 2019 through legislation for the state and receive all of our funding from the Nevada General Fund. It's just kind of a landscape of who we are. And we are, as Greg mentioned, a small, out of order there on my thoughts, but we are considered an office of outdoor recreation. So this slide, I needed to update it because as of Monday, there are 19 states. Massachusetts just created an Office of Outdoor Recreation that have either task force or policy advisors. And the idea with the offices of outdoor recreation, we are often familiar with state parks and recreation departments. Offices of outdoor recreation are more kind of on the connective tissue end, the policy end. Like many of our other offices around the country, we don't manage land. We are not that regulatory in nature. We serve to connect people. We're that kind of connective tissue of ideas, and often serve in a little bit of a unique role for state government as champions of cheerleaders doing a bit of, we'll say, education, not necessarily advocacy or lobbying, but education around the needs for improved and continued access to outdoor spaces, increased funding for outdoor spaces, things like that. So that's kind of our role within the state government. We have a very long mission statement that I like to say is about 3/4 longer than a run-on sentence. So I don't try to read it, but what I say is what we do is we connect people and programs to resources to improve equitable and sustainable access to the outdoors in Nevada. We're currently undergoing a strategic planning process and have identified 5 goals here. Those are based on, I think on the last slide, there was a little bit on the confluence of states. It's a kind of a loose configuration of those offices of outdoor recreation, but these goals are loosely aligned to the 4 pillars that the confluence has that kind of binds folks together and inspires the work. I won't try to read the slides verbatim to you because you all have them in front of you and they're here. But like I said, they're all kind of focused on connecting people to the outdoors and improving our work. So who we are a small but mighty team. Our administrator, Colin Robertson, has been on board since early 2020. I joined about 13 months ago. And then our program officer, Elizabeth, joined this summer, and Kendall, our grants and project analyst, who I like to refer to as our outdoor education wonder czar. She joined about 3 months ago or 2 months ago. So, and those are just some of the things we like to do. We don't just give presentations. We don't just write policy briefs and reports. We actually live our work as well and try to get outside as much as possible. So what have we done so far as a division? We have kind of taken over or been handed the outdoor education recreation grant program from state parks. We've developed a trail building technical school, so people can learn all of the aspects of trail building, called the Tioga Trails Institute, along with the Great Basin Institute as an EDA grant. We are mapping trails in Southern Nevada with the Nevada Regional Open Space and Trails Initiative. We 2 years ago or a year and a half ago passed the SB 52, which is the Nevada Starry Sky designation piece of legislation, which will help create designated dark sky places in Nevada that we can celebrate and market to improve dark sky tourism opportunities around our state. We've authored an EDA grant to retrofit lighting in Boulder City. All told, we have either helped or been the lead on bringing about $15 million of federal funding to Nevada, in addition to just our allotment from the general fund. So we're hoping to build on that in the coming years as well. And then we've also led the development of the Nevada Agreement for Recreation Shared Stewardship, which is based on wildfire shared stewardship agreements, but will create cooperating agreements and opportunities between state agencies and federal land managers as well. So kind of what we are working on in these areas, right, is this presentation is that first bullet really is facilitating greater awareness of needs, of opportunities of elected officials and city government. We have a goal, I think a strategy to engage with every elected city council and county commission within the next 18 months with an informational presentation. Just let them know who we are and what we're doing, where we're going. Supporting local communities, we are partnering with the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program to help support 9 different projects around the state with planning and facilitation. The Carson River Corridor is one of those, so we'll be engaging there on that grant and that program later. And kind of as we elevate the awareness of our division, we're going to, and the outdoor recreation economy throughout Nevada, we are just about to publish an RFP to create an economic impact study of outdoor recreation across Nevada. We currently can speak to state level data, that says that it is responsible for $5 billion of economic muscle and that it creates 50,000 jobs, the outdoor recreation industry in the state. But what our study will hope to do is drill down to the county and incorporated city level and also do some sector level call outs. We'll be able to see how much money and how much economic impact, say, snow sports creates, or OHV riding, or climbing in Clark County. So we're going to have some of those call outs, and so we're able to more accurately talk about the economic impact of this sector. And then finally, kind of I'll talk about supporting state and local agencies and incorporating those needs. We partnered with Nevada State Parks in producing the 2022 State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. And our job there now is really serving as chief cheerleaders for the SCORP, its objectives, its strategies, its findings, and disseminating that to local jurisdictions around the state, highlighting those user needs, and also kind of pairing that with a choice point planning guide for recreation development that we are currently working on that is kind of designed to remove systemic barriers to recreational access and public space access as well. And then so kind of what we're working on, as I said, that strategic plan, which we're hoping to finish up in kind of midwinter, collaborating with the Federal Highways Administration for Federal Lands Access Program grants. So kind of helping them raise the profile and incorporating outdoor recreation access into kind of the prioritization matrix for FLAP grant applications in Nevada. So want to talk more about that during our question and answer period, we can really nerd out. Improving tourism destination stewardship in Lake Tahoe, developing these kind of local recreation networks across Nevada. So if anyone is familiar with kind of the Sagebrush Ecosystem Program, those local area working groups, take all of the bad taste of those out of your mouth. These will only produce good things and create kind of community momentum around local recreation projects. As I mentioned, supporting RTCA for program funding, and then also exploring how to include outdoor recreation in really pre-K through 12 and post-secondary education programs across Nevada. And some of the programs we're running, right? The Starry Sky Destination Program, our outdoor recreation grant, that Choice Place Planning Guide. We are almost done creating a business directory for all the outdoor recreation industry businesses in the state. We kind of had to manually sort through a list of about 1,800 different businesses because the way we got the data, it classifies bike rental the same as a U-Haul rental. So it was 1,800 lines of data. And then creating a non-motorized trail organization resource hub. So kind of not necessarily the resources around funding or dollars, but organizational capacity, information, people power, those kind of resources as well. So yeah, I'll pause there. Do you want to do questions about this now, or do you want to do questions about everything at the end?
Does anybody have a question on what he's covered so far?
I know it was very fast, and I apologize for that.
Okay, well, let's just do it that way.
Okay, figured, yeah.
Now or later, I don't think it matters.
Doesn't matter to me.
Go ahead.
Quick question. So you're mentioning you're working on your strategic plan and it being done midwinter. What partners are you working on with that plan?
So right now, we're going to be kind of focusing it on other divisions and our advisory board. And the idea is to create a list of projects that can kind of raise our profile and kind of help us unfurl our wings. And then the idea is in 2025, go through a full-throated strategic planning process for either a 5 or 10-year plan. This will just be a 2.5, 3-year plan to kind of help us get momentum now that we're fully staffed. So, and all of that 2 or 3-year plan really is informed by all of the work we're doing currently and the partners as well. And we've done several listening tours around the state as well, so understanding what communities are looking for from us. So.
Okay, and I'm assuming that's involving federal partners, right?
Yes.
There's less than 1%. It's like less than 0.5% of Nevada lands are actually state lands.
Right.
So,
87% of the state is managed by the federal government. Right.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So.
On the collaboration with FHWA on the FLAP grants.
Sure.
So is that already a requirement, or is that something that you're hoping, or not a requirement, but I guess an opportunity, or is that something that you're hoping to establish?
I would say it's an ongoing opportunity. I think what is going on essentially is a needs inventory and a project prioritization exercise for FLAP grant eligible projects across Nevada. One of the reasons Central Federal Lands is running that is because Nevada, for the past several years, has not always taken advantage of the full allocation of FHWA money that can come there for a variety of reasons. And so Central Federal Lands, FHWA, is undergoing that. They've done listening tours throughout the state already. Kind of at this point, they're creating a full project list. And then they're going to create a prioritization matrix, essentially, to help rank those projects. So it'll just be easier for them to both analyze and award them. And just because of ongoing collaboration, they are very keen in placing outdoor recreation and access to outdoor recreation or improved access as one of the filters in that prioritization matrix. And so we are kind of like crosswalking the SCORP and its strategic objectives and its strategies into their existing prioritization matrix to kind of elevate how projects will be scored based on recreational access opportunities.
That's incredible.
I can't guarantee that will result in projects that are only about recreation being approved, but it does highlight FHWA's commitment to partnering with entities like us.
Well, it sounds like it's creating opportunities to better take advantage of available funding and to, when we think about interconnectivity and complete streets and community, I mean, this is a way to truly provide some access and to have a better opportunity to have access to that money. So thank
Certainly,
you.
yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick comment building on what Commissioner Schutte said, is that FHWA is a transportation agency and the money would come through them, maybe even through the Department of Transportation. So I'm assuming that you would be coordinating with them as well, because that may open opportunities for additional funding, especially when you use the words equity and inclusion, and just providing opportunities for people can really help expand the availability of grant funding that you could tap into.
Certainly. And just to clarify, you're talking about the Nevada Division of Transportation or US DOT?
The Nevada.
So, okay, great. So yes, and we are starting to build a better relationship and I guess not better, but a stronger relationship with NDOT, especially their multimodal team and their planning team to take advantage of those opportunities as well. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Nice presentation. Thank you for coming. It looks like a lot of emphasis on trails and open space and things like that. Is there thought of including recreation opportunities in city parks, for instance, say ball fields, tennis courts, pickleball courts, blah, blah, blah?
Certainly, yeah. And I'm a big fan of disc golf. I would say yes, that's kind of the second half of my presentation is a little bit about that as well. I would kind of, to give a little more context, when we often talk about outdoor recreation policy or this newer field of outdoor recreation practitioners like myself, some of the early work and even now to this day is focused on those treasured landscapes, those big federal pieces of land, those places that are out and up. However, we also know from user data from every single state in this country that more people access the outdoors down the street, around the corner in their neighborhoods, right, in city and municipal parks. And so we certainly are turning our gaze towards engaging in that way as well, and working with municipal providers as well. It's just it can be a little more challenging because a lot of the work we do has been so focused on state and federal land managers that it's kind of, if you learn to drive an automatic, learning to drive a stick at age 25 is challenging, but there's a lot of the same motions that go through it. I will say I learned to drive on a manual, so pretty confident.
I would just comment in general that in terms of economic impact, activities like softball tournaments, tennis tournaments, pickleball tournaments, disc golf tournaments, soccer tournaments have the potential to create incredible tourism opportunities. Just to give you one example from Utah, St. George, Utah has the World Senior Games annually, draws about 10,000 athletes and pumps between $17 and $20 million into their local economy over a 2-week period. So, the tourism opportunities are definitely there.
Certainly.
Those forms of recreation.
Certainly, yeah. And we work with a lot of the local DMOs across Nevada and also Travel Nevada, Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs on that as well. And, I know from my previous work, I was the tourism director for a suburb of Portland, and then also for a city on the Oregon coast as well. So I'm a firm believer in that power of meshing outdoor recreation access and tourism for economic benefit for communities. So.
Matthew, you might explain who your board is, because that makes up your team to the larger scale.
Yep.
In a brief way, so people will know who the partners are automatically.
Yeah, so put me on the spot here to something I didn't have written down. Thanks a lot, Mark. We should have skipped that question is really what. Yeah. So our board is named in statute. It's the director of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, director of the Department of Wildlife, Nevada Division of Tourism and Cultural Affairs, Nevada Indian Commission, and then we have several kind of, and the Lieutenant Governor. Sorry, I should not forget the elected officials. And then several appointed areas. So Amy Berry from the Tahoe Fund sits on our board, as well as a representative from GOED, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and we have a couple of folks from the health and wellness field as well. So yeah. So I will say we also recognize where there's some gaps there. So our federal partners and our nonprofit or civic sector partners, we're hoping to find ways for them to engage on that level as well. All right. Thanks. No more gotcha questions from Mark. Okay. No worries. Okay, great. So this is the presentation I gave at the Transportation Trails and Tourism Summit. I came out of some work I did for a recent program at Oregon State University. As part of a capstone presentation, trailhead in every park. I also kind of cut my teeth in mountain bike advocacy, and so that's kind of an area that's near and dear to my heart. I try to pawn all of that work off onto our program officer, Elizabeth, now, who's more than capable of taking it on, but some of that work still is near and dear to my heart. And I'm also a millennial despite my receding hairline. So Salt and Pepper, they want to talk about bikes now and maybe unmet needs. So thank you. At least one of you got that. Thank you. Yeah. I won't even say the name of the song, but some of you know. There you go. Yeah, there you go. So really, this presentation also is if you've ever had time to go riding bikes with me or ski with me or hike with me, I will, anytime we stop, I'll say, hey, I have this idea, or hey, I've been thinking, and that's a problem because when we don't start so these are a representation of my thoughts, and this presentation is kind of connecting them and putting them in a line. So I will also say I will be a little harsh to dog parks in this presentation, but I want to say up front, I'm a former dog dad. They are not the best, most productive coworkers, but they are the best coworkers. So just want to put that out there ahead of time. So it's kind of talking about a little bit about mountain biking history. Mountain biking has existed since the 19th century because when bikes were first invented, we didn't have paved roads. So essentially the first bikes were mountain bikes. For example, that picture there on the bottom is the 25th Infantry Bicycle Corps, which was an all African-American group that actually pedaled from Yosemite to Yellowstone on specially made bicycles. And really the origins of mountain biking can kind of be traced of modern mountain biking to Marin in the 1960s, where people would take these kind of cruiser or clunker bikes and ride them down Mount Tam with coaster brakes, oftentimes just eating up the brakes on one time. But there's diverse types that go uphill, downhill, electric mountain bikes, things like that as well. So when we think about mountain biking advocacy, it often tends to be reactionary or threat-based, often in the face of trail access closures. You'll probably often hear of polemics between wilderness and bikes, which we won't necessarily get into, but has often focused on the needs of the dominant user type, which are folks like me, which I'd say are pale, stale, and male, and not necessarily getting diverse user groups out there as well. And often, unlike many other forms of advocacy that we often face, tends to be volunteer or end user based, rather than industry-led, right? It's the folks, like Peter here, for example, leading the charge. You don't often get presentations from the CEO of Specialized Bicycle Corporation, but we often know, or if we talk about our petrochemical industry, ordinary car drivers don't want to write their senator about the needs of oil pipelines. It's the industry leading that card. So the industry, the MTB advocacy industry and ecosystem think has some growing to do in that realm. Some of you are probably familiar with the different types of mountain bike facilities, right? Trail-based experiences, whether it's cross-country riding like we'll have at the Ash to Kings out here, or specific, bicycle parks that are built on ski areas, free ride or downhill areas. And then also park-based riding that can happen in city parks and municipal parks, pump tracks, dirt jumps themselves, skills parks, and skills trails, things like that. So just kind of orienting ourselves for what we're going to be talking about a little bit later here. So mountain biking and youth, when we really think about, there are opportunities to build youth-specific bicycle facilities. When we think about youth bikes, we're often talking about wheel sizes that are different than adult bikes. Adult bikes often have a 29-inch or a 27-inch wheel diameter. These are bike wheel sizes that are all 24, 20, 16, even down to 12 for some of those like youth or infant strider bikes. And those types of facilities, so when we talk especially about like whoops and berms and all those, can actually be built specifically for a smaller wheel size so that the riding experience for those youth riders is greatly improved. But if you were to take your adult size bike on it, something just wouldn't be right. Your timing would be off. And so when we talk about youth bike facilities, we're talking about things that are actually designed for smaller bicycles too, and can be built for varying skill levels and with materials that range the gamut from concrete to natural surface trails. So just here's some great examples of that. The center bottom one is actually from Fallon on the NAS base there. So some ones from Bend and then some ones from New Mexico as well. So that can be used to teach skills, but also teach transportation skills as well. So, sorry, sometimes I get a little dry mouth, so yeah, it makes you. Just the regular stuff, yeah. So when we talk about these youth-focused bike facilities, they are often a lower cost to construct and to maintain than major adult-sized facilities as well, often starting at that $100,000 to $300,000. So when we think about the cost of a new park facility in its own, we're often talking about 10% or less of that park facility of, say, new capital construction costs. And many of them can be modular as well. So why these matter, right? They allow children to build lifelong skills, not just physical fitness. That term traffic stress, right, or a stress index is kind of used to indicate levels of safety or stress that a vulnerable road user, someone who walks, bikes, or rolls on the street with traffic feels. And there's two ways to reduce that stress. You can either build safer infrastructure, protected bike lanes, protected sidewalks, things like that, or you can increase the skills and confidence of the user. And when we provide opportunities for youth to build those skills at a young age, they will become more competent users of those transportation systems as an adult as well. If we think about children that learn to ski at a young age, and by the time they get to, say, their mid-30s or even younger, they're ripping versus people who learn to ski at a middle age, or the same with people who learn to drive a manual at age 25. I'm sorry if there's any of those in this room. It's an easy pick. So also another way to think of it is teenagers who grew up in New York City or Chicago versus those who grew up in rural Montana. If you place both of those folks in a Barcelona subway at rush hour, the folks who grew up in New York City or Chicago will be more comfortable using that subway system. So the same thing with children who learned growing up these bicycle skills, right? And it's a form of play, not just transportation. And one of the things that our division works really hard to is to affirm the need for play in our youth and our adults as well. That this form of outdoor recreation, this form of play, is not just important economically, but it's important for our physical, our mental, emotional, and our spiritual health as well for people who are 3 to 103. And we also have to think about this is not just installing it for today's kids, but future generations as well. And thinking, I was told once, and this 20 years down the road, I was told once that I was playing chess and someone else was playing checkers, and it just didn't work between us. Think about that for a second. And why it didn't work is because we were on a board of directors of a nonprofit together, is that every action we were taking, we need to be thinking how it not only affects what we're doing, but the next step for the adjacent project as well. And so when we're installing these kids' bike facilities, it's not just about the neighborhood children who have access to that park, right? It's kind of going back to those lifelong skills. Like, how is this affecting something else positively that will occur a decade from now, 22 decades from now as well? So, and it's also important, right? It's not just, I like bikes, of why we're doing this, right? We know that the way kids play in nature has a lot less structure and more I guess, stochasticity than indoor play. And that builds confidence. We also know that the average American child spends 4 to 7 minutes playing outside each day, but 7 hours a day on a screen, right? And so if we just build more of these places to play, they'll have more access. I know it's not that simple, but I'm on the access side of things, right? So promoting creativity, imagination, unstructured play allows them to interact meaningfully with their surroundings. Being outdoors in these play spaces teaches responsibility. It provides this different form of stimulation, right? It's not that violent video game. It activates more of our senses. It gets kids moving, right? It creates those health benefits. It lets them think, and it reduces stress and fatigue. It's also been established that people who spend more times in parks and natural settings tend to report higher levels of health and happiness. And there's actually a threshold number that this study here says that magic number is about 120 minutes a week, right? That's that threshold where there is a significant increase in happiness, of spiritual improvement, and physical health for people. So I decided to look at some data. So that's kind of the background. And so for this project, I looked at some data because I had this epiphany. I was throwing a chuck-it ball for Finn there at Fernhill Park, which was in Portland where I used to live. And I thought, like, wow, this city has more places for dogs to chase balls, to run around off leash, than for kids to learn to ride bikes. And specifically, kids learn to ride bikes outside of our busy and increasingly more dangerous transportation grid. We also understand that we live in a capitalistic society, whether we want to or not, and that how we spend our money is a direct reflection of our values. So if we're spending more money on places for dogs to chase balls than for kids to learn this healthy life skill, we're choosing to prioritize the former, right? And so I knew that urban park providers weren't meeting the needs of their recreation public. So I examined some data to kind of figure it out. So I looked at statewide comprehensive recreation plans from Nevada, from Oregon, and Washington, and examined some park facility data from Reno, Portland, and Seattle. I picked those three as I grew up in Seattle, kind of cut my formative professional teeth in Portland, and I now live in Reno. So that's why those three cities are on the chopping block, so to speak here. So kind of I looked at the last three SCORPs from these states and found that mountain biking, right, was the 8th most popular activity among all respondents in Nevada. In Oregon, it was not in the top 10, but the 4th most popular activity in Oregon was dog walking, going to dog parks. So a little bit of, and in Washington, cycling was the 6th most popular activity for youth respondents for their SCORP user study. And that 16% of respondents listed some form of mountain biking in Washington, right? And that was the same number as going to dog parks. And tennis was about 7%. Tennis was the lowest. And I'm sorry, I haven't brought in tennis here. I'm sorry for tennis lovers here. The reason I'm gonna make fun of tennis and call it out here in a little bit is that if we think about a tennis court, it's a paved surface that's about the size of a youth bike facility, really, as well. So it's just an analogous use of both space and concrete in a park. So from those three cities, I found out the number of dollars invested in park capital improvements over the last 10 years. Seattle's on a different scale. They also weren't too keen on participating. That 25 million figure is just 1 year of capital improvements, though, I will say, versus the last 10 years from Reno and Portland. In that time, the number of park facilities you can see in Portland 50, 137, and 330 in Seattle. They all did not have many mountain bike facilities or youth facilities, but a significantly higher number of tennis facilities and off-leash dog parks. I think we can attribute the kind of small number of off-leash dog parks, both in Reno, and I'm going to assume for Carson here, is because of the abundance of adjacent federal lands where that activity is allowable too, right? So kind of makes up for that program space. So why that's important is because we know that mountain biking can lead to healthier communities and healthier lives. A researcher, Dr. Randy Rosenberger at Oregon State University, actually created a cost of illness savings health estimator for Oregon based on transportation data and also SCORP findings, so the State Comprehensive Outdoor Rec Plan, the user data findings. So you can plug in the number of minutes you engage in a number of activities every week and the county, and it will actually go back to, based on the number of people in that county that do that form of recreation or engage in that form of recreation, the cost of illness savings to the residents of that county and to the county as a whole, and number of deaths prevented from doing that. So that death's negative. That means that if you mountain bike 120 minutes a week, so using that going back to that number, based on the number of users, we can actually prevent 19 people from dying. Why this is important is if we look at the cost of illness savings, really, and won't focus on the death, but based on the users for tennis courts and for going to the dog park, we can say that actually mountain biking per user saves twice as much money for Multnomah County, which is where Portland is, than those other two forms of recreation. And really it's that maybe we're not meeting the needs of the recreating public if we can save money and more people are asking for it, is essentially where I'm going. And just to note, our division is in the process of figuring out what resources we need and how quickly we can create a similar cost of illness estimator for all the counties in Nevada as well. So we would like to look at this data too, because it's incredibly, there's only 2 states, Michigan and Oregon, that have kind of done this work. So we're hoping to get on the podium as soon as possible there. So kind of where I went here, and I know I'm running a little bit late here, but just some thoughts here for park providers is that we can create healthier communities, healthier places to live and work if we just utilize existing user demand data. We have that most recently in 2022 or this year, the Nevada SCORP. That's where I got the Nevada data, and understand where recreation is going. We can look back at previous SCORPs to see where the trends in user data, those unmet needs are, and where things are going, not just necessarily what we've always done when it comes to recreation. Also, as a former and a current government employee, I always think, I like to say, give ourselves permission. Give ourselves permission to dream, to act, to be a little bolder. What could we do? Not what is maybe expected. Maybe what will create the highest and best outcome for our community, not what will create the less fervor, right? And we think small, both for our children, right? And we start small, pilot projects, trial initiatives, things like that. Rome wasn't built in a day. We don't need to put a kids' bike park in every single park just yet. Let's see how it works and go from there. And then plan for incremental growth. Advice for advocates is, and this was kind of targeted especially for Oregon. So Peter, not necessarily you. You know this all already. It's okay. But understand your own goals. Develop your why, kind of proactive advocacy. What are we trying to achieve? Not necessarily what do we want. Articulate our process internally think a lot of people just want to build sweet trails that they can ride, but helping all members of kind of that advocacy ecosystem understand where they're going is important. Also, I think something that I've seen here, both with Carson Valley Trails Association and with Muscle Powered, that is exemplary, is developing relationships with multiple levels of state government and multiple, I say multiple employees within a certain government, right? The line staff, the field staff that are helping you maintain the trails, those in the planning department, and also those setting the policy as well. And thinking mother, not other. And what I mean by that is when you Google mountain biking, these are the first two images that come up. The image on the right is how I often choose to ride mountain bikes. But it doesn't mean it's the best way for our communities to ride mountain bikes. If we think about families getting out together, instilling those lifelong skills together and helping each other learn, that's where we need to go, is those. My mother's 75, I want places for her to ride, not necessarily places for me to ride in cities, things like that, so. And then finally, some advice for advocates is, identify those potential allies, civic leaders, healthcare providers, education professionals, people that will benefit from or want healthier communities as well. Seek to influence change. Embed yourselves on park boards, advisory councils, budget committees. That's where the real rubber meets the road. Triangulate, which is help those policymakers, those decision makers, hear things from 3 different places, because then they start believing it's their own. At least how it works for me. If I hear it from 3 different employees, then I'm like, oh, I have a good idea. And then have patience, finally. It takes a while to build a trail and a park, but it will come together. So, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks.
for your presentation. Does anybody have any questions on either side? Anybody over here? Mark, go ahead, sir.
First of all, I want to tell Matthew that was a really good presentation. You're an engaging speaker. That
Thanks.
was really good. I enjoyed that whole presentation. Matthew and his shop was given an award from we just recently had this conference, as some of you know or some don't, the Tourism, Trails, and Transportation, which was the best gathering we've ever had with those 3 groups ever in the history of our groups. And it was over 350 people showed up. And Matthew and his shop was given an award this year for being so proactive as a state agency to go out and engage themselves entirely with this whole process. He was on the team that put together this conference that took a lot of work, actually, to put this very successful conference together. So I thank him and his group. And I love the fact that the state agency has engaged themselves with park and rec boards and comes to meetings like this and represents outdoor recreation in Nevada and shows the benefits, and that's what they're doing. And then what the dream is, which their latest position, the word grants is in there, and that's what we all hope, that you have money with the program. Everybody gets excited about that, but they've been fully engaged with the community outdoor rec, and Matthew's really brought that out. And he's hired Elizabeth there, who has another great skill set to work with these other groups in the communities and the state and go in the cities and counties in Nevada. So huge accolades for that. And their award was well respected by 350 people, the peers that were excited about the state, this agency being engaged in this community. And he left out a few things. He didn't talk about that they helped sponsor this ESTC program with hundreds of hours of staff time. And then they also got a trail map now that I can't remember the title of it, that you're going to have that site through.
It's the Nevada Trail Finder, so I think it's nevadatrailfinder.com. But we're working, it's a collaborative really between Great Basin Institute, our OHV program and commission, Nevada State Parks, and Endor, to create a free to the public web-based mapping tool with every form of trail in Nevada. So that'll be water trails, ski and snowshoe trails, OHV trails, equestrian trails, hiking, running, mountain biking, et cetera. I think our original goal was to launch it with 50 different trail systems. We launched it with 60 trail systems. I think we launched it with like 153, and we're still adding more. Actually presenting an RTP grant tomorrow, hoping to get a little more money so we can actually continue that work. But yeah, we're just hoping to provide that information and that access, because we do know that a lot of these trail mapping programs or platforms, whether they're mobile or web-based, to access some of the kind of the highest and best use material often costs money, right? And we're looking to reduce that barrier by offering that free of any charge.
So my last comment was that I was going to give a presentation, but Matthew kicked me out. And it's about advocacy. So I have a couple things to add to your advocacy that as part of it. Patience is a big one, but you only need 2 pieces of equipment. One is boxing gloves, because you're going to have to fight for everything you want constantly, and you got to keep your dukes up. And the other is chest waders, so you can wade through all the bureaucracy to get that goal that you see in front of you. So that was my chance to plug my session that you kicked out of the program. So.
Mea culpa.
So thank you for all that work. And actually, Matthew and his shop is in our audience tonight. Are 2 other winners at our conference. Greg sitting next to him for his support for the open space program here tonight. And you're going to have a speaker come up later tonight with Peter coming up as another award winner in this community for this. It's a regional based organization. The transportation was, and that was a stateside. So thank you for all your work and your full engagement in the community for that department. That's great, Matthew.
Thank you, Mark.
Donna, did you have a comment?
Yes, I listened to Matt present this at the conference, and I was really taken with this, especially because we just recently wrote the dog policy and added several dog parks here in Carson City. And when he talked about priority setting, and that really hit home for me, in that we seem to be setting our priorities on dog parks instead of our children. And I lean more towards, not so much towards a pump track and dirt bike type stuff, but more towards the skills, because I got to thinking, teaching our children to ride safely and getting comfortable with riding and learning the ins and outs of bicycle riding on streets at a young age, and making them, like Matthew said, confident, means kids that are going to be riding bikes instead of cars, and every time you take a car off makes it safer for that next one to ride a bike to school or to the Boys and Girls Club or their friend's house or on an errand for their parents, which makes somebody else ride their bike and takes another car off the road that makes it safer. And so I wanted, to start the discussion on something like that here. And I kind of been thinking about this and kind of came to it moved forward for me. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about the need for these group meetings, the joint meetings here, and what the benefit is of our meeting jointly. And I got to thinking about that, and one of the things that I think we might be doing at these meetings that would be of benefit would be for us to be looking at our connectivity between parks and open space. Are we meeting those connectivity, non-motorized connectivity needs? Could we be looking at that in these meetings? Where are the gaps between parks and open space? Are there gaps, and can we be doing something about that so that we get kids from their homes to their schools, to the parks, to the open space without needing a car? Could we be looking at that? Could we be bringing safe routes to schools and working with them and Public Works? I know Commissioner Schutte and I are probably the only 2 people that go to the Public Works stakeholders meetings on a regular basis. And I think we're probably the only ones that actually speak up in those meetings and ask questions. And maybe that's something we could be putting on the agenda for these joint meetings, to be looking at the connectivity and be advocating for that connectivity, especially with the new developments that are going in. Are they connecting to the schools and to the parks so that kids can get to these areas without having to be in a car? That's just, but I was hoping that this would bring up a discussion about, is there a way we can put in one of these skills parks somewhere so kids have an opportunity to learn how to ride a bike safely? So anyway.
Matthew, thank you so much for this presentation. It was fantastic. And Donna, you actually took some of the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking, Matthew, you were talking about building relationships between all of these agencies, which is vital, but we also need to somehow include the school district in with us. And we have a lot of magnificent linear trails, but not many kids use them. And I'm wondering if some of those skills, I still want a skills park. I've always wanted one. But having some of the, for the smaller tires along those linear parks, because then it would be a blast to ride to school. And they want to do that. So I'm wondering, in your prior work in Portland, did you ever see any collaboration between school districts and like parks or?
Don't want to go far down a rabbit hole on Portland parks or Portland schools. However, not much collaboration, but I have seen examples of it in other cities around the country, and it can be done. And kind of to both Mary and Donna, your points around safe routes to schools and safe routes programming, you can actually use safe routes to school funding to build linear bicycle trails, as long as they do connect to neighborhoods and schools. It is an allowable engineering cost, essentially. And there's some wonderful examples of it, especially in Arkansas, that have built pump track sidewalks, essentially, for several
I'd like
blocks.
that.
So it's an allowable cost. But I do think your points and your questions about engaging schools is vital.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
So, Mary, just to let you know, that's kind of why I'm here, is because I'm the school board representative for Parks and Rec, so that we do have that overlap and have that input going back and forth. So that's one of the reasons why the school board has an appointee on this board. So we have been trying to work that part. We've been working hard with the safer routes to schools. And we've been doing that. And even the Educational Foundation had their bike rodeo before COVID, which was going to be an annual thing. So we do have that. I think there's a lot more opportunities to expand that. And I hope that the next person that gets appointed will be willing to do that and put in that work. But I think it's a great opportunity for us all to do something together.
I agree. I know that as a retired teacher, we have a bike and pedestrian program in this district, and we have our own bike trailer, but it's really up to the PE teachers if they want to do it or not. And there's so many wonderful parts that are already there. They just need to be brought together and expanded upon.
And part of the strategic plan that the school district has put together is put that wellness component in there, so that could be an opportunity to expand on that too, and make that part of one of the goals, is to use that more in that.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. And then just for clarification, what is a pump track?
So imagine an oval that isn't, say, flat or linear, but has kind of whoops and berms in it. So the idea is you start by pedaling, and then you can pump your bike down, like with your arms down kind of the downhill gradients of like the whoops, gain more momentum. Then you lift up as you go uphill, and you kind of continue that momentum. The idea is that you can kind of keep your momentum going and actually increase your speed without actually pedaling. the idea. So it just teaches those handling skills as well. And I just do want to say for the record, I know that on the agenda, it was listed as legislative updates. We have submitted and are going through some concepts currently for this upcoming legislative session. But just because those priorities, we are part of the administrative branch in the governor's office, and the governor hasn't released his budget yet. And what we don't know what those will be. I just don't want to get out over the skis and talk about what those are yet. So do apologize for that.
And then just added, now that we have a couple parks, Dave, that we're taking out playground equipment, like Sunview, Sun Villa, and Riley Park. Those are down the line that we talked about here, that we were taking out the playground equipment to make improvements to other areas. There's some area there that could be used for some of these linear parks where there's, especially with the cost aspect of only $100,000 to $300,000, that might look at too.
Yeah, for the record, it's Dave Navarro, Park Operations Superintendent, and yeah, I mean, just want to clarify that that playground, we put out, that was just kind of like a, it was more of a concept, then, but after hearing the presentation tonight, I mean, are there opportunities out there? I mean, absolutely, I think that there are.
Another retired teacher, A+ on the connective tissue analogy, because I think with this, the questions and the discussion, wow, the ideas, opportunities, access, and you have all of us thinking in ways that are really kind of expanding our ideas. And I've always been a yes person, and I give myself lots of permission to dream. That said, it's really nice to see and hear it actually in action. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for coming and sharing your presentation. Oh, I'm sorry. I
No
didn't
worries.
see anything.
So there's lots of great ideas being proposed. One thing that we see as you worked in municipality before, staff is short time and extra projects are limited, is the Nevada State Office, your office, are they willing to kind of champion the grant writing process if they're going to partner with agencies? Like you mentioned, bringing in $15 million. So who's bringing that money in? Where is it coming from? And how could you help Carson City be able to achieve more grants to be able to build additional facilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that money is coming from a variety of sources, both economic development, administration, Department of the Interior, and a few other departments too. And obviously, we're kind of in the hunt and always looking for additional funding, and currently have a few things kind of in the hopper. Kind of going back to the the idea of that non-motorized trail resource hub. So grant writing support for, say, civic sector organizations. We are hoping to make that part of that as well. Haven't kind of crossed the bridge yet on whether it be for municipalities as well, but that is a great suggestion. As a anecdote, in the tourism ecosystem in Oregon, I was always kind of maybe beating the drum a little too much on this idea of investing capacity, not just infrastructure. And one of our regional destination marketing organizations did that. They spent $8,000 for this contract services of a professional grant writer for nonprofits in their region. I think they applied for something like $130,000 worth of grants, and they got like 90,000 of those. $8,000 of trail doesn't go very far, things like that, right? And so I'm a firm believer in investing in capacity and grant writing and development capacity, so to speak. It's just a matter of where we can find that money and that time. As you can imagine, being general funded and then bringing in all this other funding, we are operating on the OPM model a little bit, other people's money. So finding the funding for that is a challenge. We'd have to do that as well, but it's definitely something we'll take under advisement.
Like I was started earlier, thank you very much for your presentation. It looks like through Greg, anybody that had any questions further, we could get in touch with you and so forth. So with that, we'll move on to item 5B. Thank you, Matt. So item 5B is a presentation related to the trail projects managed by Open Space Division, the Capitol Tahoe Trail and the Odyssey Trail. And Greg, you're going to start with that one. So thank you.
Okay, so for the record, Greg Bergeron, Trails Coordinator. I don't normally give a Trails update at the joint meeting, but I did want to highlight a couple of major projects, significant projects that that Muscle Powered has led the effort on, and I want to give them an opportunity to kind of toot their horn. So the Capitol Tahoe Trail provides the first regional connection, or the first single track connection from the capital city to Lake Tahoe, and by extension to Canada and to Mexico. So a huge project, and that was led by, again, by Muscle Powered. And so I have with me tonight Pete Donges, who's the Trails Coordinator for Muscle Powered. And I wanted to also recognize Chelsea Kinslow, who is in the audience, and she is the president of Muscle Powered. And with that, I will turn it over to Pete. Oh, I also want to also recognize Pete for, I believe member Kimbrell already did, but at the recent Transportation Trails and Tourism Summit, he did receive regional recognition for all of his outstanding efforts to volunteer and to promote trails in our community. Pete actually puts in, I think, probably at least 30 hours a week, for which he gets paid in dirt, but he likes that.
I got a story for that too.
Okay. So when you want to move on, you can just tap that button right there.
Oh, is this the right thing?
Oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry. Oh, no, okay.
I'll use the little.
Just use that key. Okay. No, I guess not. Use the enter key. Well,
Did you hang it up?
what key do we use? We could
Restart it and see if it goes. You're the ace. He's also IT for Muscle Power. Okay, let's see if it works. Okay.
Now it's working.
Great.
Okay, well.
All right. Okay, well, I'm Pete, and I'm a board member. Oh, is that on? Yeah, I'm a board member, the Trails Coordinator, as many mentioned, and a crew lead and a grunt crewman with Muscle Powered. I love my job. I'm a long-haul biker and hiker, so I know what I want, like many of our crew leads who are also bikers. I'm also an old 11-year football player from a long ways back, and I've probably got a certain amount of that in me, so it kind of helps do the job. I didn't know a lot about trails several years ago, but I built a 1-mile trail for the first time in my life during cabin life with my wife Vicki back here years ago, and it worked, and the wildlife loved it. So from that point on, I've always wondered, what can I do with this? Came to Carson City and had an explosion in our social and civic life through Muscle Powered, and learned how trails were really built, way beyond anything I understood. And my great inspiration for that was Jeff Potter, my predecessor, who taught me many things about trails. But one of the first rules was, if you're not having fun, don't do it. And so whatever Mark had to say about bureaucracy, I'm having fun. And my wife has a story that some of you have heard about this. She calls it the Dirt Fun Index. And when I come in, with my clothing filthy and this cloud of dust trailing my face, she says that index is pretty high. So we've got a lot of people among crew leads and crew, and certainly the inspiration of all of you who probably feel the same way. So that's kind of my background. As Greg said, I'm really glad to be here to discuss a labor of love for me and many people, which is this Cap to Tahoe Trail. I'd like to give you a kind of a 30,000-foot view of the gestation of this thing, kind of where it's at and where it's going. I'd like to spend what might seem like inordinate time on thank you. There's an amazing community here who make things like this happen, and so I'd like to spend some time on our early heroes and our incredible supporting community-based groups who make things like this happen. It cannot happen with any one of us or any small collection of us. And then I'd like to do a little quick tour here on the computer that Greg put together with some photos about both Cap to Tahoe and also Lincoln Bypass, which is kind of a launch platform for the ultimate workability of Cap to Tahoe. The Cap to Tahoe vision really kind of sprouted around 2014 when my predecessor, Jeff Potter, and I imagine you guys were, and Mark were all involved with the envisioning and the launching of Ashton Kings Trail. And the Cap to Tahoe vision really is a dream of a breakthrough connection between Carson City and Lake Tahoe State Park. It, as Greg said, it creates regional and international connectivity out of Carson City while venturing into wild, remote places. It's just an incredible combination of features that way. It's an amazing trail from the top of the highest altitude of Ashton Kings Trail across a couple of bridges and through some amazing country in the upper reaches of Ash Canyon to reach the Tahoe Rim Trail at Lexalt Junction, if you all know where that is. So it's a dream trail, and it's accessed right off King Street, right off Kings Canyon Road here in town on the old Longview trail that's been absorbed into Cap to Tahoe. So it's a thrill for us, and I'll put a map up briefly without a lot of techno speak about this. If you look at this overview, we're kind of staring down at Carson City. North is up. Lincoln Bypass is that green squiggle in the southeast part of things. It absorbed an old trail called Longview, which is right across from where I think Alan lives, and was extended to create a connector that gets hiking and biking and conceivably equestrian users off Kings Canyon Road, and especially the dirt road part of Kings Canyon Road that got so beat up over time. And so it allows trail users to get a launch off a street in Carson City and get up to the base of the Ashton Kings Trail. The blue squiggle through the middle there is the trail Ashton Kings that connects Ash and Kings Canyons. It's about 7 miles long overall, but about 2.7 miles up from Lincoln Bypass, it joins a little connector that sets the stage for Cap to Tahoe. And if you all have been to the waterfall parking lot and you've noticed that gate heading off to the right, it's called the Waterfall Trail and goes way up to a place called the Log Deck, which is a place involved with logging many years ago, and the fire on that side of town. And Cap to Tahoe from that point goes 9.5 miles through some of the most incredible country I've ever seen up to the TRT. So that whole story about getting up to the TRT and around the lake and then off to Canada and Mexico is really true, and it's a selling point as well as a thrill for all of us that love biking. So I'm going to leave the computer for a minute on this slide while I sort of give thanks. Cap to Tahoe is, in my impression, is a story about passionate people bringing it into existence as much as it is about trail features. Our early heroes, certainly for me, are Jeff Potter, the undisputed father of muscle-powered trails, and an incredible inspiration for me. Ward Noose, who is an old dog around town here that is a senior crew lead and a kind of a backwoodsman. He's somebody who lives in the hills on that side of town in many of his spare waking moments. Alan, who Jeff gives credit for helping envision this thing and walk walk the walk to figure out what it ought to be. And a guy who some of you may or may not know, Kevin Sullivan, who's an early enthusiast who joined these crazy guys to, to help wake this thing up. He's a fun, unshakable hiking chum, and he's a great crewman. Some of you here, like Kurt and Alan and surely Mark, if not working at Captain Tahoe, you must have a lot of dirt under your fingernails from some other project. But all of you know what it means to go out there and socialize and get trail built. Beyond the work in the backcountry that those four people did to sort of latch on to the idea and start to think about routes and worrying about keeping all the stakeholders happy and deciding how to do it. We also had committed land managers. Of course, Greg here with Carson City, Steve Miklas, who's the ranger up in state parks in the Spooner Backcountry, and Brian Hansen, who's a wonderful supporter from U.S. Forest Service. He's the recreation officer there. Have helped make this thing work. We've also got the enthusiastic recreational tourism advocate in the form of David Peterson and his staff, who with Visit Carson Tahoe have provided amazing patient funding that has been protected year after year, several years ago, to help fund the environmental surveys that are necessary with the National Environmental Protection Act. There's something, I think he's probably put in as much as $40,000, dear money that we have an awful hard time raising, in our organization to make this thing happen. We also have the Recreational Trails Program, who provided magnificent help in the 2021 grant cycle. And I'd like to mention Heather Geiger, Art Krupitz, Elise Jolly, and certainly Janice Keeler, who provided funding for Captain Tahoe and Lincoln Bypass, especially for spending on mechanized trail building and materials for a couple of bridges that we needed to do, to the tune of about $128,000. And that's just more money than a little organization like us can count. Of course, we've got the city also has a major stake in this with Craig and the OSAC group with $20,000 of match money that was provided, under the requirements of RTP to help pay for this thing. There also is a keystone player in this that not many of you may know, Dr. Christian Mansfeld, who is a surgeon and a trails enthusiast and an avid bike rider. He provided critical right-of-way permission and adjustments to the track of Captain Tahoe to cross private land under a protective easement. And we're going to sign that thing like crazy to get people to pay attention when they're on that land and be respectful. And he's still in the game. I don't know whether he'll ever get the dwelling he hopes for up there, but I wish him well. And we wished he were here on crew, because there's some part of him, I think, that's built that way. We needed 2 bridge designs and also some assistance on site, figuring out exactly where to put them. And Chas McCory provided freebie design and documentation and crew participation that was critical to us. If all of that's not enough, Muscle Power donors, large and small, built up an amazing little pot of money in a trails fund. I think at one point when I was counting, it was around $12,000. But that thing, really helped us fund bridge materials that we didn't think of, road decommissioning, paying for mechanized trail building assistance that we needed beyond RTP, beyond any other framework to get things done. Back in 2020, when this thing launched, Muscle Power committed about $7,000 of its own money to pay a professional trail builder to supply about $14,000 worth of work, discounted to us, to help get this thing off the ground. And when I meet people like that are that committed, it blows me away. So we've also got the dream team. Mark, many of you know it, but it's the Eastern Sierra Trails Coalition. They have this wild dream to build trail from Reno to Markleyville and to make connections, to make connectivity around the region, including links to Lake Tahoe and certainly Captain Tahoe and Lincoln Bypass, and the rest of this are going to make that happen. Crucially, and I must mention this, the passionate, exquisite professional trail building of Sierra Trail Works and a guy named Kevin Joel, for those of you who don't know him, and a half dozen finishing crew who started back in 2020 with funding from Muscle Powered and then later with RTP to make the most amazing, flowy kind of dream trail that I've ever seen. He's a great guy, and he understands the spirit of giving, because he has given a lot of stuff to us off book without a contract, and we've given stuff back to him because it works. And to be able to work with somebody that thinks like that and has the passion like that, I can't count the days. And finally, we've got Muscle Powered Crew. I think at last tally for a celebration we're having this Friday night, we had numbered 35 women and men who have shown up, to build the parts of this that aren't mechanized and who just don't quit. And I've got to give them just the biggest tap on the back. With all this, it's surely a dream, and it can't be happening, but it is. And I'm just a little overwhelmed. So in this trail, what I think we've got is a really wild, remote place for being at one with nature, in awe of the way it ought to be. And while we play, working trail grunts, we've got this incredible team behind us that are like concert fans, urging us on. You talked about bureaucracy. The hell with bureaucracy. It's not an issue. And every time we stub our toe or don't know what to do next, the bureaucrats tell us what to do and kick us down the road. That's the way this place works. So I think Captain Tahoe is destined to become a regional and national draw for recreational tourism and certainly biking and running events. So to close, Muscle Powered and Sierra Trail Works have the passion with this team to finish Captain Tahoe, and we're sure going to do it next summer. We've got a temporary arrangement right now where you can kind of follow that map, except skip a little piece of it and use a road to bridge along so that you can actually ride the whole thing or hike the whole thing. We've got an unbuilt 2-mile piece that will be finished next summer, and then we can fully commission this thing. But there are crew leads who are testing the trail, and intrepid users who you just can't turn back. The cat's out of the bag, so it's just happening. Signs say, caution, don't use, we're not done yet. They just go anyway. And so we need to move quickly to bring it up fully to steam. We've still got a little bit of work to do. The wintering over this winter will be the first time that dusty trail conditions are beat down into something that's more like finished tread that won't be so subject to erosion as bikes fly by. We need to put up signage. We may put up benches. We enjoy increasing support from the Tahoe Mountain Bike Patrol organization, who are more prevalent over on the Tahoe side and are beginning to ride over on the Carson side. And I hope we see a lot more of that. So we're looking forward to user responses and questions. We certainly want this trail to work. We need to stay on top of it, as it starts being used. But I really feel hopeful about it. And I hope you can join us next year, if I'm not speaking out of turn, at Silver Saddle Ranch during National Trails Day in June to celebrate this magnificent thing. Thank you.
Did you want to show a few photos?
Oh, yeah, and I certainly want to show you some photos. This is the good part. Now you're tired of listening to me. This is a kind of a sprinkling that, that Greg put together of photos from different action going on. This is the Kings Canyon Dry Ravine above Board of Meadows, above waterfall parking. I think this is Tyler Wood and probably me in the background there, manhandling some boulders. For those of you, especially on the Parks and Recs Commission who aren't familiar with trail building, some of us are trained to use what are kind of like big come-alongs. It's called a grip hoist, where you suspend, huge boulders on a cable and you move the boulder from A to Z and drop it plunk, just in the perfect spot. This is part of building a gigantic rock bridge that crosses the dry ravine of Kings Canyon Creek above Border Meadows. So we're having fun. This is dangerous work, and so the key guys who run the grip hoist and manage the action kind of know what to tell us to do. This is another shot, and is that Greg, I think? And maybe Nate and Tyler? Yeah. Manhandling another huge boulder that was pulled off a hillside nearby to help build this bridge. This is our good friend Kevin Joel with his play toy, having fun pioneering trail along a middle part of Capitao that's about 3.7 miles long, I think. This is Jeff Potter and Ward News that I mentioned earlier. They with me and another guy named Paul Sinnott, who ramrods the trail building in Prison Hill. We're getting timber for the bridges up to sites along tributaries of the Hobart stream system that feeds Hobart Reservoir. These are gigantic things, and you have to, it's not mechanized. We got pickup trucks and people. That's about all there is to work with. So that's a sample of getting a long 20-foot stringer beam ready to go for one of the bridges that we put in. This is a bridge going together, and I think that's Nate and is that Alan? Maybe, yeah, thank you. Putting together, I believe, the 10-foot bridge at a point about a half mile in from that road I mentioned, Snow Valley Peak Road. Slapping, deck runners and pieces of the bridge together. This is the finished product. I think this is the 10-foot bridge, Greg. I get disoriented with the view lines. But this is one of those bridges that Chas designed to Forest Service specs that are designed to something like a 300-pound per square inch load that is not horses, although it's rated for horses, it's snow load. And so it needs to be quite strong, and the foundations use higher technology called geocell foundation technology that provides stability on these somewhat loamy forest floors to float bridges and make things work. This is a pretty shot looking kind of northeast off Lincoln Bypass Trail above Border Meadows back toward Waterfall Parking that you can see in the distance there. That is also Lincoln Bypass heading uphill from well above the original Longview Trail up toward the top of Lincoln Bypass Trail, and this is a sample of Kevin Joel's work. This is the first 0.9 miles of Cap to Tahoe, right where it takes off from the Waterfall Road, with a glorious view of the city in the background, built by Kevin Joel and his crews. This is a snapshot of a piece of the trail that Muscle Powered built on Dr. Mansfeld's property, running through his woods. It's just a fantastic place, and we don't talk to him much, and he just supports us. It just works. These are starting to be Cap to Tahoe photos, mostly of Kevin Joel's work. Kevin handles the public lands part of the project, and Muscle Powered the private part. We do hand building on the private part because we can't use RTP funding for such a thing. This is a piece of Cap to Tahoe back near the 20-foot bridge at that road I mentioned, Snow Valley Peak Road. This is a glorious lupin picture that I think Greg took years ago, right at the foot of Snow Valley Peak, not far downhill, if I remember right, from the Tahoe Rim Trail, probably looking west, if I remember right. And finally, this is a deer photo that Ward News took right after me and another crewman finished the trail at this spot. A few days later, when the snow hit, Crazy Ward takes off on snowshoes, goes from the Waterfall parking lot all the way up to this place, which is, I don't know what it is, 1,000 feet up, and, trekking across countryside to get this shot. So the sign there is a little favor left behind by Kevin Joel as a marker of his work. And that's the end of what I got. So any questions?
Oh, actually, you know what, let's just continue on.
Oh,
and
oh,
we'll-
yes.
Then we'll do questions. You can stay,
Okay.
Pete, you're fine.
You can add
I
this
just
one.
wanted to also, I had invited Paul Sinnott to come. He's another amazing trail builder, but Paul likes to avoid the limelight, and he would rather be a builder than a talker. And so I have to talk for him. So Paul led the effort to create the phase 1 of the Odyssey Trail on Prison Hill, which gives us the first family-friendly, sustainable connection from the Coons Lane Trailhead up to the Saddle and to the North Loop, which the North Loop is also alignment of the North Loop was also a Paul Sinnott project. But that shows some of the crew at work. And it's named the Odyssey Trail, which is an adventurous trip, and we think that the Odyssey Trail fulfills that title because the views up there are absolutely awesome. And as you can see, it's a well-built, sustainable trail with low grades. It's about 5.5% average grade, so a very easy. It's something that I can ride the whole thing very easily on my bike, and so that's a testament to an easy trail. And lastly, a photo of Paul. Since he does like to avoid the limelight, I included a photo of his backside, but the visionary on Prison Hill, and that is our presentation tonight. So I'll let you ask Pete if he has any questions you may have.
Okay, with that, do we have any questions? Go ahead, Alan.
First, I want to thank both of you for all your work on not just these trails, but a lot of others. And I also,
Been a great ride.
Paul has also spent a fair amount of time on the west side, even though he is heading up the work on Prison Hill. He's been an invaluable additional worker on the west side without question. So Paul's a great guy. And I want to, some of the things that, people will never understand. You wouldn't know unless somebody told you that some of the reroutes that we did, particularly because of getting the private land, and I think Greg spent a lot of time making sure that happened. We ended up with being able to get rid of a pretty terrible segment, north-facing, steep, and crummy ground that would have snow on it much longer. That we have a trail now that's not only much nicer, but it'll be able to be used a lot longer because we're not in a situation where we have something that we have to spend a lot of time maintaining and not being able to use because there was snow on it. So that what might think of as a kind of a small change actually was a big advantage. One other thing I just might want to mention, I don't know if you could go back to that first slide where you show the trails, but just kind of want to mention
For Cap to Tahoe?
the Cap to Tahoe Trail. I just wanted to mention in terms of thinking where we're going, I hope, in the not too distant future is one of the things that we've been talking about for a while, and there's a lot of details that need to be worked out, but I would like to be able to connect the Lincoln Bypass to the Clear Creek Trail, so we have more connectedness between us and Carson Valley. And so it's just something for the other members that this is something that we, a lot of people have been thinking about, and there's some complications without question, but it is a goal that we would get that done too as well. But again, thank you both for the presentation as well as all your hard work. Thanks.
Pleasure, and thank you.
Peter, you epitomize exactly why you got that award. Watching your emotions strike up, just talking about these experiences you have on the trail, having spent many years of the Tahoe Rim Trail, the volunteer force there was just phenomenal. The friendships that were raised from people that gathered and worked with the skill sets they brought out and worked their heart out. You totally showed that, all that passion that you have about building trails and volunteers who build the trails. It's very few that get built by private contractors. It's the volunteers out there that gain these relationships. And that's why you had to spend time talking about, the people you work with, because that's just as much of the part of that.
Yeah, those people mean.
Jeff Potter was the world and started this ball rolling and brought people in and saw his passion, and they see your passion. And Alan sits here and he's part of that same group. Nothing but accolades for those groups of people like yourself that go out and put their heart and soul and build these trails that last. What a legacy, huh? Forever.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
The people part of this equation is the real pay dirt.
I haven't gotten out to the Odyssey yet. I can't wait to get out there and see that god-awful ditch is gone.
Pete, I just want to thank you so much. Muscle Power. You mentioned how special this community is, and it's because of people like you that makes it that way. But that is what Parks and Recreation and open space is all about, is bringing people together and doing it in a healthy way. So I just wanted to say, I know everyone thinks the same. Thank you so, so much for all that you do.
It's greatly appreciated. And this guy's family.
I know we're lucky.
So anybody over here? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Pete. Okay, so moving on down the agenda, it looks like the next item that we're going to have here is I'm going to pass it over to Alan so he can talk to the Open Space Advisory Committee on your next year's schedule of meetings.
Right now, the proposed dates are February 21st, which is a change from our usual schedule because of a holiday, April 17th, June 19th, again with Parks and Rec, August 21st, October 16th, and December 5th, again, a joint one. Does anybody have any comments or concerns?
That's a holiday, that's Juneteenth.
Yeah, that's Juneteenth, and then that following week I'll be gone, but. So, yeah, June 9th, but Monday is Juneteenth day.
So it's a,
Okay. Do
Dave,
you
are you-
want to make a motion to change that date?
Let's pick another day.
You might want to put it to staff because you don't know if this room's available during one of
okay.
those. So
Building or
maybe
staff.
throw that one back to staff to bring
Yeah,
up at your next
I
meeting.
agree that we should put the June 19th back to staff for reconsideration.
Okay, so that's your motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Do I have a second for that motion? Okay, so all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed? Okay, passed. Great.
All right. So back to the Park and Rec Commission. Now we're going to talk about the schedule for our meetings. And it's the first Tuesday of every month. What we have here is February 7th, April 4th, and then the one that we have a joint meeting that we're going to look at changing wouldn't be on the motion. And then we have August 15th, October 3rd, and then another joint meeting on December 5th with the open space. And how does that look to the Park and Rec Commission? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve that? Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. So we're kind of passing this back to Dave and his crew and to fix that meeting in June.
Question?
Sure.
I just do have a question or maybe a consideration. This year, we moved the meeting that fell on Juneteenth a month, and that really does impact schedules, because then you're almost back-to-back months. So maybe in looking at new dates, keep it within the same month if possible.
Yeah, let's see, for the record, Dave Navarro, Parks Operations Superintendent. Yeah, absolutely. We will do that and try to pick the best date. What we'll probably do is gather a couple dates and probably send them out. So, but we will try to keep it with as close as to that original date as we can.
Thank you.
But it's going to be, we'll have to look at the schedule, what's already scheduled, everything as well.
Well, thank you, Dave. With that, we're going to move over to a director's report. Do you have that, Dave, or is that going to?
Well, since the director's not here, I guess we don't have it. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I didn't know which one of you over there was going to do it.
Well,
That was my ultimate question.
Actually, just want to say that Jen Budge and Lindsey Boyer were not able to attend tonight. So you got like Dan Arp and myself to kind of tag team this director's report. So I'm going to start off and just give some updates, and then I'll turn it over to Dan and the comedy act in between us. We'll try to wrap this up as soon as we can. Okay. Okay. So I just want to couple of updates here before we get started. Just wanted to remind that the commissioners here that the board retreats for the OSAC and the PRC board is December 16th. And that's going to be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. There was an email that was sent out that also had a link in there for a survey. The survey, I think the survey date was December 6th. So if you haven't completed that yet, you still have time, like tonight, to go and maybe another day or so as well. I think, but so anyways, if you can complete the survey, that will help us when we get to the board retreat as well. So we have some ideas and know which direction to go and everything like that. Okay.
Dave, will you remind everybody where that meeting is?
Shoot, I lost off the top of my head.
I don't recall seeing it in the email, so.
You know what? I'll have to get back to you on that.
All right,
That's
if
a
you
great.
just send all the information out to
Great
everybody,
question.
that'd be great.
I know that there's going to be some additional information that's going to be coming out soon, and I think one of those was going to be
Location.
like the location as well,
Okay.
because I
Thank
think
you,
we were
Dave.
still trying to nail that down. Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
I could be wrong, but we'll get that out to you.
Dave, one question on that.
Yeah.
Are you including the new members for next year?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to check on that.
I would
I
hope-
know that the email was sent out to the current members when it was sent out. So for the new members, who were just appointed, I don't know if they were on that
Okay.
list or not. But
Yeah, I would hope to include those folks
Okay.
if we could.
okay, absolutely.
Okay, is that it, or were you still going?
I wish that was it. So sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry.
I wish I could get off that was just the first thing I wanted to talk about. Employee updates. We have hired our third park ranger. Danielle Sattler. She came aboard September 27th. So now our park ranger staff is actually full. And in addition to that, we have a seasonal park ranger who's going to start at the beginning of the year as well. So we're going to have actually like 4 of them out there. So we're kind of excited about that. First time I think we've had that many park rangers. The most we've had is 3. So I'm looking forward to that. We also we have renewed or regained the Nevada Department of Corrections offender work program is back. So we do have their help. We got them back in the end of August, beginning of September. Originally, when we had the program, we had 20 of them helping us out. We have a total of 10 right now, and so far it seems to be working out really well, and it's helping us catch up in a lot of our deferred maintenance that we haven't that's been able to get to, or that has been put off since March of 2020. So just wanted to give everyone an update on that. We have a couple of staff members who are going to go in front of the board for their 5-year anniversary. Andrew Melendez and John Burnham. They'll be going. Andrew is like the recreation side, and John Burnham is our sports field coordinator for the Parks Department. So looking forward for those guys to get up there and get recognized. They do an outstanding job, like for the department. Projects, Mills Park Master Plan. We conducted a public meeting on November 15th. It was in the Bonanza Room from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. We had a really good turnout, and we had a lot of great ideas and great feedback as well. At that public meeting, we had two kind of like conceptual some plans. We labeled them A and B, and that was based on from the survey like results that we got back. And so now what staff is doing is we're taking all the comments that we have received, we're putting them all together, and we're working with we'll see design and workshop, and we're gonna come up with like a conceptual master plan and see work on that, hopefully to bring that back sometime at the beginning of the new year. Again, we had some really good ideas, and I think that we were able to put in on like a lot of things in there, and I think there was probably some confusion at the beginning because people thought that, oh, this is going to be this big, or we had to choose between A or B, but it's just these are kind of options, and like, what do you like best in option A? What do you not like in option A and option B? And then we're kind of merging everything like together. So that's coming out well, and like I said, we'll be bringing that back probably at the beginning of the new year. Yes.
Well, I have a question about the Mills Park. Leanne's not here, huh? She mentioned to me one time that when the Mills family donated the park, there were some restrictions on what use it could have. Do you have any idea what those might be, or has anyone done all that research?
We have done some research on like how Mills Park became. It was the property was originally part of the VNT, and it was owned by the VNT. It was then there was a like a foundation. It was the Ogden Darius Mills foundation who owned it, and then there was a group of 4 members and they were just random members of the community that were put together, and they worked with the Darius Ogden Mills Foundation to purchase that land to make it the first municipal park in Carson City. So that's the only information we haven't found any restrictions that came with that purchase. So, but there's just kind of like a brief history of it. So, which was kind of neat to find out all that information. So, and that's how it became Mills Park. And then it was turned into golf course until 1978. And then that's when it became where it is like today. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, that's a great question. Okay, where was projects? We recently completed the asphalt parking lot project and paving behind the MAC. Previously, that was just kind of like a dirt area. It was slated originally to become a parking lot when the MAC was first built, but we didn't have all the funding at the time. So we were able, over the years, to acquire that funding. So now we do have paved, sorry, Denny, paved parking back there with lined let's see, parking spots. I don't know exactly how many spots we gained, but it's a pretty good like amount for that this area there. So that one was recently completed. We recently completed the tennis courts at Ross Gold, and those have been opened up. And that was actually that was one of our better projects, and it turned out like really nice. So we have 2 tennis courts out there
I
now.
played there twice already, and
And?
they are
What'd you think?
beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Great to hear. That's great.
Yeah,
So-
I can even run better on that surface than I can on any other surface that
Wow.
I'm running on these days. Yes. Thank you for doing them. Was
You're
worth
welcome.
waiting for.
You're welcome. Couple of Board of Supervisor items. We're going to be taking the dogs rules and regulation. Let's see, policy will be going to the Board of Supervisors in January. So that's when that's gonna go there. And let's see, I thought there was one more item. I'm seeing my notes, but I guess that was the only one. I want to thank the disc golf, the Carson Ridge Disc Golf. That's the association. They had their first disc golf tournament. It was October 16th. They had approximately 70 people signed up, and overall, probably over 100 people attended the event. I was out there. It was a great turnout. Everything ran really, really smooth, and we got a lot of really nice compliments and feedback on that event. So, kudos to those guys, for doing that. So, and other than that, that's all I have. So I'll turn it over now, to Dan.
All right, so for the record, Dan Arp, Recreation Superintendent. Just a couple things on the recreation side. So kind of adding to the discussion that Dave had about new employees that we have in the city. So on the recreation side, we were able to get 3 additional full-time employees. One, which was Albert. He's a supervising lifeguard. I think we've talked about that position before because we filled that one pretty early in July when that got approved. But the idea of that is just because it's so hard to find seasonal help, we took some of our seasonal budget and turned it into a full-time lifeguard just so that we guarantee we have a lifeguard that's there 40 hours a week to try and reduce what we were having to close pools off and on here in the therapy pool or different pools because we just didn't have enough lifeguards on duty. So that has significantly helped us having a full-time lifeguard at the pool, and he fills in some supervisory responsibilities as well. And then more recently, we were able to bring in Sierra Scott. She's our recreation supervisor for arts and culture. So she started in October and she just jumped right into it with the arts and culture master plan that the city has and kind of diving into those goals on the strategic plan, working very closely with the CTA and her counterpart over there with arts and culture on the tourism side. And then she's focused on arts and culture for the community. So public art, but then also programming and things like that as well. So hopefully as she has a little time to get her feet wet, we'll start to see a lot more arts and culture related programming and just displays and things like that in our community as through her and also through the CTA with Deborah Soul over there as well. And then the other position that we also were able to get as well, his name is Chris Orduno, and he just started in October as well. He's a sports coordinator, so he's working over the MAC, but basically just to help with the demand that we have for sports with the tournaments, but mostly programming as well. We get a lot of requests for youth programs that we just haven't been able to accommodate because we only had one full-time person designated to that kind of section for a long time. So now we have another full-time person to add to that. So he's already jumping right into it with a whole bunch of new ideas, tournaments and fun little things for the community and for youth sports camps, spring breaks, stuff like that we hope to be able to see pretty soon. Speaking of that, we're working on our winter activity guide, which we hope to have out in the next few weeks. So by the end of December, hopefully we'll have that out.
hopefully before we can get it printed and out into the hands of the students before they go on for winter break is kind of the goal, which is coming up. We have the guide almost done. It's got to go to printing. So we'll see that. That'll cover the activities from January through April. So we're excited to get that out, and we have lots of fun things coming around. And then lastly, this weekend, we have our Homestead Holidays event, our 3rd annual out at Silver Saddle Ranch. So we're pretty excited about that. Pretty much the same format as before. We just added a few, not new things, but just extended the services available. The biggest comment we got last year was just that they loved the event, but because of the crowds, there's lines for everything. So we tried to reduce that. So instead of one food vendor, we now have multiple food vendors. We filled the craft vendor area. So we're just expanding kind of our operations just so that we can hopefully reduce the lines and people can enjoy all the things that are out there to see without having to wait, 45 minutes to get your food because of just, the lines and things like that. So that's this weekend. So it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 9th through the 11th, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. each evening. We do expect crowds, and we do have a shuttle service available once that parking lot at Silver Saddle Ranch fills up, which it probably will pretty early on. Then we'll have overflow parking available at the 5th Street Trailhead, and also we have a permit with the school district to park at Eagle Valley. So you just cross the street to the 5th Street Trailhead, and we have Jack Bus helping us out, plus our own vans as well, just kind of keep that shuttle moving and bring people down into Silver Saddle and back. Just kind of reduce the impact in Silver Saddle itself with the parking there. So that is the updates that I have on the recreation side.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for those two? Okay, great. So moving along, future agenda items. We had the golf course come and talk about getting on the agenda for next year's meeting. So other than that, does anybody else here? I'll go with the Park and Rec side first. Does anybody else have any items that they'd like to see on the next agenda? Okay, great. Then I'll move over here on your open space side.
Anybody have any
Alan, thank you, Mr. Chair. There was statement made in our last meeting that regarding the rocks policy, and that might have come to this meeting, but it didn't. So I think that's something we still need to talk about. And then the memorial policy as well. We haven't seen the final version of that, so that would be good to. It was approved. It was approved. Okay, by the supervisors. All right. All right. So I didn't see that. Was it? The memorial was approved? Okay. All right. I stand corrected, thank you, but the rocks, I think was something that we were still looking for. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, great. Next thing we have on our list is anybody that would like to make a short comment. I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, well, how about member comments? I'm sorry. It wasn't on my list.
Okay,
Sometimes it isn't.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Want to mention a couple of things. No meeting is complete without talk about pickleball, so here we go. Want to thank Parks and Rec Department for donating the MAC facility for our 2-day tournament on October 22nd and 23rd. This tournament was called Dinks and Drinks, and we served up pickleball and also adult beverages. And we had 136 players participate. 2-day tournament, we played 320 matches over the 2 days. We awarded medals in 17 categories, I think. So it was a big success. We raised, for our pickleball project, we raised over $5,000. And the city also made a considerable sum, I think, on the alcohol sales. So I think overall it went real well. It was well received and everybody had a good time. So thanks Parks and Rec, Dan and Scott and Chris made it all happen. Announcement on January 10th, we have a Move with the Mayor event at the MAC, 6 to 8 p.m. It's going to be an intro to pickleball, 2-hour intro to pickleball for beginners. And it's on the Parks and Rec site to sign up, and I think we're almost full. We're limited to 30 players. We have 6 courts. We'll have about 5 players per court and around 15 volunteers to help out. So it's going to be a neat event, and if you are interested, look on the Parks and Rec site soon because it's almost full. So, and thanks for sponsoring that event as well, Dan. So that's all I have.
So from the schools, we'll have 2 new members joining the board. So there will be a new member in my position. I've turned out. I want to thank staff and the commission for the years of service. It's been a nice ride. I'm looking forward to doing it in a volunteering capacity now. So, but I did want to thank staff for all their hard work and all the times that I've called and you guys have answered my questions. I've appreciated that. And it's been a joy to be on this commission. And I'm sure the next person will have as much fun as and get as much done as I did.
Yeah. In addition to thank you for Ross Gold, I want to put on the agenda, I don't mean the formal one, but in our heads, Centennial Park. That's such a beautiful complex and it has so much, it has fields for soccer and for baseball and disc golf, and the tennis courts are an eyesore, absolutely. And I'm hopeful that we will keep it in the front of our minds, and that'll be the next thing that we start working on. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll go with the public comment. Does anybody out there want to talk for a couple minutes at the end of the meeting?
I'd like to talk for several hours after all of that. That's amazing information. Thank you very much. Denny French, Carson City, for the record, and thank you, Chair and
Welcome, Danny.
Commissioner. I'd like to add a request to have Empire Cemetery put on the agenda of either parks or open space or whatever now it is judged to be labeled under. It has not, at this point, to my understanding from Jennifer Budge, been identified as being owned by people. And I'm concerned about some of the situation up there. So I'd like the cemetery to be on either the parks or the open space, whoever's going to accept it as their responsibilities agendas. I'd also like to thank you all for meeting like this. I'd like to put that on the agenda, both parks and open space, to make time for these type of connective agenda deals for all of you showing up together. I think that connectivity is really going to help. I think these discussions and you're getting to know each other will be wonderful, so I'd like to see that. Also, I would like to see Mills Park put on the Parks agenda for continuing the updates. After having talked to Dave Whitfield, I understand that things have changed even since I spoke last to Nick Wentworth as far as the suggestions and the considerations. But I'd like to also advise that I had called the property manager for Capitol Plaza. They may be open, and since I advised that I was just a private citizen, not connected with anyone, I don't put myself on any organization. I'm an independent, whatever you want to connect me with. But just to field the idea that if there is no parking found right away with Mills Park without having to destroy more of Mills Park, that it could be maybe the property across from it between that Capitol Plaza and the car wash. But it seems to me that the developers have already started their primary grading and such, and that housing development will be moved forward. I didn't get a chance to see who now present owner is or if it's available. And there was considerations, according to Nick, that there was a plan perhaps to put a stoplight in and a crosswalk that would provide crosses 50 or Williams parking in addition for events. And the situation, my thing is that if you don't have to put down any more asphalt and you can rent or borrow a property that already has a parking place that's underutilized, would be helpful for big events and such. So I appreciate your consideration on that. But I gave them my name so they know who to blame for the call, but the young lady that answered it was not in a position to do anything but say, well, send in an email and talk to the people that are in charge. She wasn't, she was a staff. And I just think we've got to look around. We've built up to the park, and that was our short-sightedness or whatever, perhaps. But to have a car wash go in instead of something that would have helped maybe the park was sad, and that was a loss to me. But it's productive, and it seems to be busy and a happy camper company. So that's my contribution, but I also want to just really impress on you that the information that I got from Nick Wentworth went way beyond what's available to most public. And I think those type of things should be out there for the public. I can't turn around and try to parrot what I've heard or try to, from my notes, paraphrase or whatever. It should come from the horse's mouth in this case. And I think parks aren't necessarily communicating the way I think would be helpful. And I'd like to encourage some review on how they're communicating. I missed that meeting on the 15th because of a co-meeting. I couldn't then, I grabbed up as much material as I could and came back to the meeting that I was in as far as observation. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come up and close the meeting? Okay. With that, do I have? Oh, yeah. Is there anybody out there watching us that wants to talk? Jennifer has her mute button on. All right, thank you for reminding me of that. All right, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, okay, here we go. All in favor? Aye. Here, good night, everybody.